If you're getting into World of Warcraft PvP or just simply trying to find an alt to have some fun with, whether you want to do random battlegrounds or compete in arenas, this video will give you guys some ideas of 5 strongest specs in the game right now that are the most sought out for PvP. Now everybody ranks classes and specs in strength in different ways, so I'm just gonna be completely straightforward with you guys in how I did this video. The first thing I was looking at is which classes do the most amount of damage or even an exorbitantly absurd amount of damage. So this is the primary thing about these classes, is doing the most DPS humanly possible, whether it is consistent damage or in a single burst. I mean, let's be honest, all of us love seeing those big flashy numbers pop up on our screen. So we are taking a look at specs in the game right now that are doing the most amount of DPS, but every single one of these specs has a couple different extra things that keep them even stronger apart from the rest of the competition. So without a further ado, let's just jump into our list. And by list, I don't really mean I'm trying to rank these classes from top 1 being the best of the best, top 5 being the worst of the worst. This is simply just a handful of 5 that are doing really well. I'm not saying one of them is doing better than the other, I'm just trying to find the 5 strongest out of the rest. The first one we have to talk about is the one that's sweeping the arenas. Everybody's afraid of this class, and that is a Destro Warlock. Not really sure how this class became so popular out of nowhere, but I do have an idea. Maybe it is the biggest tank in the game. And by tank, I don't really mean like a tank, an archetype in an MMO genre. The guy that will be tanking the dragon, the aggro, making sure he's the only one getting hit while everybody of his allies is safe to heal and DPS without any worries from the dragon. No, I mean like a literal tank with the cannon, ironclad, everything included. Destruction Warlocks right now have very weird consistent damage. It's not really consistent, but rather the amount of chaos bolts they can throw out, which have such a punchy effect, gives them the appearance of consistent damage since they can get so many out. And once they pop all their whammies, the amount of bursts they can do is absolutely astronomical. And I do mean this literally. Most people just run away when they see a Warlock with all their cooldowns. If you are inside of an arena or in a battleground and you see a Warlock with a massive Infernal hulking around all over the place and Dark Soul buff activated for the extra crit, most classes would rather just line aside the Warlock until the storm is over before they become a little bit more manageable to deal with. We have been able to see just how strong this class is plenty of times in the 5v5 1v1 duos, but also in my recent time playing some 2s and 3v3 arenas. To tell you just how strong this class is in terms of the tank, yes, you have the massive cannon where the cannons bolts fly out of, but the ironclad part of this class comes with, on top of the fact that they're probably tankier than the majority of the melee. With the honor talent for demon armor that increases their armor to astronomical amounts. I mean, my Warlock right now has more armor than all the best pieces equipped on a Blood Death Knight, and my Warlock has more armor than a tank Blood DK. So not only does this class deal absurd amount of damage, but also you're a tank on top of it. Most of the times melee would be there like rogues and warriors to lock down a caster, but with how tanky you are, you don't really have to worry about casters or melee. You just have to worry about when is the next chaos bolt going to be launched. Next class on our list is going to be Retribution Paladin, mostly known right now in BFA for their absurd burst damage when wings are up. I feel like Paladin wings have always been very powerful in previous expansions, but currently right now, Destro Warlock together with the Retribution Paladin, and if you don't have a pillar to line of sight either one of those two, then you're gonna have a really hard time trying to recover in health, especially if both of them are running Maledict. Already, Retribution Paladins come with plenty of tools in order to support their team with Hand of Freedom, blessings to take them out of CC, you have Bop, you have Bubble, you have a plethora of tools as well as good self-sustainable healing. Then of course there's Shield of Vengeance, which can be a good defensive but can be turned around and blast the enemy back with a ton of holy power, and on top of that, Wings, the ability to completely buff your damage as well as healing for a short moment, giving you 20 seconds of godhood. Now, I'm not saying it's an easy class by any measure. That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply stating that it's a really high damage class with a lot of utility. That's why I want to put him on a list, because right now if you want to deal a ton of damage, especially when it comes to burst in a single stun, I would feel that Retribution Paladins should be as top 5 classes on that list. Next up is going to be Windwalker Monks, and for a while I didn't really think they were the biggest offender. We do the 5-5-1-1 duels all the time, and we see a plenty of Windwalker Monks, but I feel like it's a class with a lot of mobility, good consistent damage, good burst, but when you put it all together, it actually does come to be a very powerful class. Windwalkers right now have a lot of consistent damage, and that's something I really overlook in most cases, because every time I watch duels, I see monks go for big image plays, where they summon these images to do a fair amount of damage increase, compiling extra burst on top of already good sustained damage. But if you've ever been Fist of Fury by a monk, you really know what that feels like, especially if you're a melee. Fist of Fury is one of your best skills, and you get to use it quite often. It is part of your baseline toolkit to lock somebody down, but with an honor talent, it also makes you slowed down by 90%, so you're really locked into that Fist of Fury, can't really go anywhere, even if you're a druid trying to power shift out of it. But also, if you're a melee, that's 100% parry that you can't even hit into. So that combined with good consistent damage, the parry setup with Fist of Fury, which is really hard to run away from, the overall burst damage, as well as the mobility to give monks that consistency so they can stay on the target at all times, actually does put him in top of the 5 classes that are really good right now in the game, but also one of the classes that do a fair amount of damage. And we haven't even mentioned Karma or Touch of Death, so if you add those two on top of it, I feel like this makes it for one of the better classes in the game right now for PvP. Next one on the list is Assassination Rogue. Now, as someone who plays rogues right now are not in any position, like in previous expansions, where you could actually one-shot somebody with a massive DFA, but Assassination comes as close as it can. First of all, this class comes with a 30% healing reduction if you talent into it properly. First of all, this is the most amount of healing reduction that a class can get out of the game, unless you're an armors warrior constantly spamming sharpened blades, and even that is on cooldown. So with Assassination, you already have great damage, and I'll talk a bit about what makes it amazing, but that 30% healing reduction simply makes it so that other classes have a hard time self-healing. It's a hard time recovering, so in a sense, while it doesn't increase their potent damage output, it makes recovery a lot more painful. So it's in a way to augment your damage without really buffing the class, but rather making it harder for the enemy to recover after the damage has come. But even without wound poison, we do have a massive burst damage with kidney shots. We have massive burst damage when it comes to Vendetta. When you combine a kidney shot bleed with a Vendetta with a massive envenom toxic blade combo, it's actually an incredible amount of damage. We haven't even talked about the fact that rogues have stealth, which some people consider are just absolutely overpowered, but also you have crowd control, from blinds, garrotes to silence an ally, cheap shots and kidneys to lock down an enemy, and even saps. On top of all that, with this damage, Assassination Rogue is definitely one of the top classes in the game right now. Last one on the list, but definitely not the least favorite spec, would have to be the Fire Mage. Fire Mages have become a lot more popular ever since the BFA got announced, and as of BFA, they've been one of the top competing mage specs in the game so far. Frost Mage only being the second closest to the spec, but also just as viable. The Fire Mage, though, has been blowing it out of the water. Greater Pyro is one of your best utilities, but this is where some people are split on the ability itself and the overpoweredness of a Fire Mage. On one hand, it's a very long casted spell that does very, very good damage. On the other, some people look at it, it's a long cast spell that does very, very, very good damage. So some people say that the spell and the class itself is balanced around the cast time of the spell. It's not that fast of a cast time. It is something that can be seen from a time, and if you do manage to get it off, it should do a lot of damage, while others argue that with all the CC that a mage has, with Dragon's Breath, with Polymorph, with all your roots being able to blink while casting spells, the amount of damage that this ability does is simply just way too high. So you guys can decide for yourselves if you think that this spec should be in this list, but I feel that with the amazing burst that a Fire Mage compacts together with your Combustion, Fire Blast, Pyroblast, Wombo combo together lined up with a Meteor as well as a Greater Pyro, the amount of damage that you could put out from a single Wombo combo of a Mage can be the end of just about any class in the game. Now imagine a mage being super powerful. Now take two fire mages in one arena doing the same thing to a singular target. What are the chances that that target will be able to survive for long enough? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed. I've been enjoying making a lot more videos on the channel ever since my mom went to the hospital. I had really a drought of any kind of creative process, but she's out of the hospital. Things are good. Now, thank you guys all so much for warm wishes and whatnot. I really do appreciate it. I'm back at the grind and I really do get creative juices flowing in my head all over again. As I've been doing a lot more arenas, I felt like this type of video I really wanted to make to talk about some of the strongest classes, since I get those questions from my channel all the time. So I do appreciate you guys for taking the time out of your day to watch this video. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. What would you have as your top 5 best DPS burst classes or just damage classes in general for PvP in BFA patch 8.1 if you were to make this list? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.